Hello out there to all you Metsian folk. This is the converted Mets fan, Sam Maxwell, and you are here with the Metsian Podcast. And this is going to be our final episode, and where it's a bittersweet moment. You know, we've come to head at this point after a decade, almost and a half. It's incredible that the relationships that have been coronated here and everything that has come to head as Mets fans, as people, as humans on this earth, in this tri-state area, we have been through thick and thin together since 2012 when I first became the converted Mets fan. That was when I started really cultivating these relationships. I had many Metsian relationships prior to 2012 when I started blogging. But 2005 was when I first became a full ingrained Mets fan from Yankees. And we come here to finish the Metsian Podcast with a converted Mets player in Juan Soto. What a moment for this franchise. And as I can remember 20 years ago now, watching, before I had officially become a Mets fan, I can remember in 2004, the fall, watching in my dorm room, Willie Randolph, and then Carlos Beltran, and Pedro Martinez, but Pedro Martinez was first. I did that backwards, but still, I remember that moment. And then by 2005, February, before my birthday, I became a full ingrained Mets fan. And 20 years later, as we celebrate to make it very personal, my 20th anniversary of being a full ingrained Mets fan, Juan Soto signs. It's pretty incredible. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Metsian Podcast, and welcome to the last one, because we can't do this the way we wanted to from the initial, incarnation of this. Rich, I will pass it on to you, since you have been a part of this from the time that we were back with Rising Apple. It's incredible that we've come this far, but this is 13 years later, and I think all of us joined up in 2012. Am I wrong?
That's correct.
Yes. So, what are some of your memories, podcast wise? What are some of your both Rising Apple and the Metsian Podcast? What first comes to mind for you?
How far we've come and how long it's been. I remember being with you and Matt was the editor at the time at Rising Apple, and Danny, and I think it was your idea, Sam. Please tell me if I'm wrong, but I think the idea of doing a podcast came from you. And I wasn't aware of, I knew what a podcast was, but I'd never been on one. And I was skeptical a little bit about why we were going to do this, but you really pushed it. You've always been, frankly, you've always been the driver behind this. You were the initiator, the instigator. Then we started doing it, and then we all left Rising Apple, but then we decided that we should have a podcast. And we're going to talk about Mike in a moment. And so we continued on for years, or basically weekly. And then you're asking me for my memory. So the number one memory I have is the episode we had Howie Rose on. I mean, I'll never forget that. We had a literal Hall of Famer on our podcast, and I remember being really nervous, about saying something stupid and sounding like I didn't know what I was talking about during that podcast. Remember that? Remember we had Frank Thomas on, who passed recently. We had him on. We had Skip Lockwood on. And Skip Lockwood, when I was a 15-year-old kid, Skip Lockwood was closing games. Granted, the Mets didn't close that many games in those days. They didn't win very many games, but Skip Lockwood was their closer, and I had a chance to talk to this guy. It's that, and then you've done a great job, Sam, of recruiting in people we see on former Twitter, now X, people who are very vocal during the season, very vocal during the games. You've actually reached out and recruited those folks to join us. They became real people to me. So it's all of that. And of course, getting to meet you, I've run into you in various places, at the ballpark. I think once out in West Coast, we bumped into each other.
Once in the bathroom.
Once in the bathroom, and Rich, Sam, wow. So we did that, and
oh shit.
But it's, even though I've probably been in your company, had the pleasure of being in your company 5, 8 times in my life, I consider you a friend. I'm very fortunate that I've met you through doing this. And even though this is the end for this particular podcast, I hope we can join in on some more. I think we have a very fun season coming up. So yeah, so those are my memories.
Yes, and we have to welcome on somebody who has championed this podcast on and on and on, and that has been Jeff Cohen, who is in fact recording tonight, which is ironic. Jeff, because Blog Talk Radio, just has bit the dust. They don't seem to be able to adhere to what we're looking to do.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me on your show. I've been a fan since I discovered the Metsian Podcast. Always enjoyed listening to the three of you guys. And to what Rich said, I do remember the Howie Rose episode. That was fantastic. And Frank Thomas and Skip Lockwood and just you guys just talking Mets. And it was an independent podcast. It wasn't any of these professional guys with their editing and their sound effects. It was just you guys talking Mets, just making it real. And that's what I enjoyed about it.
Thanks, Jeff.
Well, I wish that I had tried to bring this a little bit more into the 20th century in terms of podcasting. And here we are for the first time doing a video podcast. But I think that kind of fits the entire narrative of it, warts and all. We are selling this podcast off to a Steve Cohen, and I will be that Steve Cohen. I will turn from the Wilpons myself and into a Steve Cohen to make a better podcasting presidential decisions, as we talked about. What was the saying? The president of podcasting operations, I think, was the
Grand Poobah or CEO, or he called it all
Grand Poobah. Well, the Grand Poobah is a rapper who his last name is Maxwell. He's cousin Grand Poobah, as far as I'm concerned. But so I can't go further on in this first of video, but last of the Metsian. But just to also clarify, I will be taking some of the old episodes and editing onto the YouTube page, and I'll be incorporating them into the YouTube page. So please continue to follow here where we are presenting via video. But one of the reasons why we can't go on exactly in this particular terms is because one of our own, Mike Lecolant, he has been ailed with something. Anybody who's been listening to this podcast as long as we've been doing it has known Mike Lecolant as a very outspoken Mets fan, and we've been here with the Wilpon years, with the Steve Cohen years, and COVID happened, and unfortunately, it wasn't particularly COVID, but we haven't really been around since after COVID, and well, I just better get into it. Hello, fellow Met fans. Obviously, I have been away for quite some time. Here is the reason why. In January of 2022, I was diagnosed with ALS, or in baseball terms, Lou Gehrig's disease. Next month will be my 3rd anniversary. However, symptomatically, I am close to 4 years into my journey. I would like to express all my heartfelt appreciation to all the listeners of this podcast. Thank you for lending us your gracious time. To all our guests, I am so grateful and beyond joyful for our interactions. Thank you very kindly for your friendships we have established over the years. And to Sam and Rich, my podcast brothers, from the bottom of my heart, I love you both. This last season was a lot of fun. I am still fighting the fight, and I am very excited for the coming 2025 season. Please let me reiterate how much happiness I derive through this podcast. Thank you, and I wish everyone peace, calm, and joy. Happy holidays, and let's go. Let's go, Mets. So, yeah, that's what's going on with Mike, Lou Gehrig's disease, and I can only smile through this, Rich, in terms of the fact that like when he was first diagnosed, he thought it was morbidly ironic from a Lou Gehrig perspective, because he connected so many different places that he's come and gone from fandom, and just where he's been as a human was connected to Lou Gehrig and connected to that. I appreciated, now that it's kind of set into me. It's been difficult, but when it first initially happened, it was just, I couldn't completely understand exactly what it was until I've seen it, and I implore everybody to donate. I implore everybody to go to Google, and I wish I had a list for you, but all you have to do is Google ALS research, and you can donate to all of this, and we should all donate to it. So, yeah, Rich, I pass it to you.
I remember it was Martin Luther King Day of 2022. I remember that. And a couple of days before, he had said, I want to talk to you guys. Texting won't work, email won't work. I need to talk to you guys. And okay, so we figured it out. I was off on that Monday, and I remember it was middle of the afternoon, got on the phone with Mike, and not what I was expecting. I wasn't expecting to hear that he had been diagnosed with a very serious disease. And Mike's a great example at least my relationship with Mike, great example of what sports can do because I've only met him once face to face. The three of us went to a game. We sat behind the dugout. That was kind of cool. And that was the only time I ever met him face to face. But I felt like I feel like I've known him like a brother, because I've known him now for 13 years, as you've said, and between the podcasts, and I feel like I know like his interests, his likes, his dislikes, his ways of looking at the world. I really feel like I know this guy, and it's just a really tough thing to take. And to hear you read that, and it's so positive, for someone who is in the situation he's in, and that's so Mike though. Um, and the one thing I think about is he's such a huge Mets fan, and he was in the military, served the country, for 4 years. And he was over in Germany when the Mets won the World Series in 1986. So he wasn't even able to enjoy that, which I find he was in the
He
service.
he found it out retrospectively. Like he was not. It wasn't in the moment when they won.
No, no, he said he was getting news from back home. I think his aunt was sending him something or something like that. And he was getting newspapers, but he did not know, like on the day the moment they won, that he did not know. And he was in service to our country at the time. And it's just so Mike though, he remains positive on everything, very opinionated, very strong-willed guy, but I think the letter you read is just so indicative of who he is. He's facing something incredibly daunting, and he's thanking everybody for what they've done. He's thanking everybody for listening and graciously donating their time, and that's just who Mike is. And it's an example of the power sports have over all of us. They bring people together. You meet people that way, and you bond over things, and that's exactly how I know Mike. I know you've met Mike many more times. You guys have gone to Brooklyn Cyclones games and games at Citi Field and things like that. I've only had, like I said, a pleasure once, but I really feel like I know Mike, and I love you, brother.
Well, one of the last memories that that I have of Mike is being at the Dominic Smith
Yes.
walk-off home run in the extra innings of 2019 that made sure it was at least equal to 1976 in terms of record. And I think 2019, we could have a conversation, I think, in terms of the 2024. 2019 fits into it, especially because of the Pete Alonso thing. We can properly put that all together. But there was something about, that season. We didn't completely make it. It was basically the last, especially because of COVID, the last real Wilpon season. And even though they're awful and I will always detest them and I will always talk against them in every quarter of every place that I go, 2019, like, at least we didn't have a like, imagine had the Mets won the 2020 World Series with the Wilpons as their last, like, imagine that happened. Like, that doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make any sense. It kind of makes sense that they were like 26-32 or whatever it ended up being, however the 2020 record went. But 2019, there was still some enjoyment. I will always look back on 2019 as an enjoyable year. And Mike Lecolant was next to me for the end of that year. The last moment of that year, Mike Lecolant looked over to me as Dominic Smith's ball sailed out into the stands. We looked at each other. He was here. I was right here. And we were I love that man. And I love what we have had together as a collective fan the way we've taken this team in since 2012, since we all three of us came together with the Rising Apple. It's just been it's a bittersweet podcast for sure, but I can't imagine a better combination of people to come together for us to put these podcasts together over the years. And I really appreciate both you and Mike, Rich.
Right back to you, Sam. It wouldn't be anything, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, it wouldn't be anything without you. You not only are the founder, but when we would start to lose momentum a little bit, be like, oh, another podcast. You're like, come on, guys, got to do it. The big thing happened this week. We have to talk about it. And we would get on and do it. And you're like the Paul McCartney of us. McCartney was the one that kept driving them back in the studio when Lennon was done and Ringo would leave the band and George leave the band. McCartney kept pushing the studio.
And so who's George Harrison here? Anyway, like I loved just random tangent. I loved on the Peter Jackson documentary where John was like, "Oh, it's another Harris song."
Yes,
that's what he called it. So everybody, please again give to ALS research, and any just if ever Mike has touched you over the years, please reach out to him via social media. He'll be sure to reach out to us and let us know, so we can pass the word along. And without further ado, something that Mike is very interested in while listening to this podcast as well as watching it, because this is the first ever time we've been on video, the 2024 Mets. So, Rich, I wanted the text messages up, but I don't think we were going to be able to. I can't seem to get it going. All of the messages that we sent each other over the course of the first text message that I found was at the end of September of 2023. And it was just like, you know what? I can't podcast right now. I can't talk about this at all. I can't talk about this at all. And you basically said there was no way this wasn't a 90-loss team. There was no way this wasn't a 90-loss team. And I have to give myself credit for just being like, they may have a plan. Something, not exactly along those lines did I say, but I kind of said how they sold this off. They sold off those other players. That spending that money didn't work. Maybe it's okay to take a second, right? And you basically said, like, until I see it to believe it, that's when I will give my season ticket. That's when I will, want to be a season ticket holder again. So I guess my question for you is, to lead into this part, when in the 2024 season did you buy in again?
Great question. So I remember those text messages, and real quickly, I had been a partial season ticket holder, for a very long time through 2023. And what I remember, Sam, was sitting there in July and August saying, I paid a boatload of money up front, right? Now I'm watching Danny Mendick play baseball. I'm watching Rafael Ortega. They stole my money. They charge me a premium price, and they're giving me absolute garbage on the field, and I'm never doing that again. I was so frustrated by it. Um, I said, you know what? Just like you just said, I'll start spending my money when they show me a good product. I'm going to be that fan now. I've always done the upfront season ticket thing. So to answer your question, when did I start to buy in again? Well, I went to opening day because I always go to opening day. And for the first 2 months, I was right. They were floundering. They had a bunch of guys on 1 year contracts that it looked like they were going to sell them all off, which I thought was going to be their plan anyway. Get these guys on 1 year contracts, trade them all to deadline, restock, keep restocking the farm, which is not a bad plan, but I didn't want to pay for it. I don't want to pay to watch it. So starting in about mid-July, when they swept the Padres, or that was actually Father's Day, was mid-June. Um, and then come mid-July when they played well against the Braves, I was like, wow, this team is they hit the 500 mark. They were now in the playoff spot. If the season would have ended then, they would have been in the playoffs. I started buying in then, and I went to a bunch of games from July right through the end of the season and even into the playoffs. Went to a game against Dodgers, and so yeah, I started buying in and spending my money other than opening day. Started really spending around mid-July right through the end of the year. And honestly, and I know we have Jeff, and I'd like to have Jeff comment on this too. It was lightning in a bottle. It's great, and that's what made it so great. I think most fans, if I can say so, felt like I did. The team was basically built to be torn down again and rebuilt, and they were going to be sellers at the deadline and all that. A lot of things clicked for them. A lot of things clicked the right way, and it became one of the most fun seasons I've ever been a part of. And I'm happy it did, of course, right?
So, Jeff, before I pass it on to you, let me ask you this. Is there something about the 2024 season that not only is unique in terms of the history of the team, but also just perfect in the way that it segued into the next era? This is kind of, because I really think that this was a culmination of everything that we've been hoping for, because I think that Steve Cohen had a lot of things going on behind the scenes prior to the baseball catching up the way it did in 2024. And I think that there was a lot of exorcism, to use that word, whether it be the Braves and the Phillies, just that alone. We didn't get over the Dodgers, even though we beat them in 2015. But 2015 was a Wilpon season, and they didn't want Zach Wheeler to be there for some reason. But that's not a whole other. That's part of the narrative, right? So anyway, I think that there was something about this season that even and the way they lost to the Dodgers, number one, wasn't the way they lost the Yankees lost to the Dodgers, and number two, it was just kind of like, eventually, as great as this team wound up being, and you could tell, looking back on, you're just going to be like, yeah, of course they got to this point. I feel as if it's a unique season, even more than something like 99, in that even though they weren't the ring bearer at the end, it's a turning point. It's something that it's almost as if they won the championship, and especially, weirdly enough, the way the Yankees ended up losing their potential championship to the team that we ended up winning more against.
Well, this was definitely a fun season, as you said, and I was an intern for the Mets in 1984. Worked with in the public relations department with Jay Horowitz, And that, as you know, they just turned the corner from 83 being a losing season and 84 winning 90 games. And it felt kind of similar this season. I mean, I know 2 seasons ago, went to the playoffs, win 100 games, and Buck Scholes was a manager. Again, first year manager for the Mets. He takes them to the playoffs just like Carlos Mendoza did this year. And I think did Willie Randolph take him to the playoffs the first year? I don't remember if he did or not, but
not the first year.
not the first year. Okay, but still, it was a turning point, and this was a turning point. I mean, it got off to a sluggish start, as we all know. 11 games under 500 on May 29th. New management, which saying, look, they're gonna just play it out and get rid of the players, and then something happened, and I don't know. It was Julio Iglesias coming up, the "Oh My God" song, the grimace, whatever. That was cute, but it brought them together, and it brought them together, and they took off. They played as a team, and they had fun, and they were just doing great. And you know what? I'm a big Pete Alonso fan. He didn't have the greatest of seasons. We expect him to have a better season, but they won, and that's all that mattered. Things happened. Mark Vientos, who didn't make the team because of JD Martinez was signed late. He was sent down. He comes up because of I think a paternity thing, and then sent back. He hits a game-winning home run, sent back down, comes back up, and just takes the position and just has a fantastic year. And that's he was one of the catalysts along with Francisco Lindor, having the greatest second half as any Met could possibly have, and they just took off. And they look, they played an incredible. I mean, we all thought the Phillies had the division locked up, and they did win the division. But once you get to the playoffs, anything can happen, and that's what all it means. And how they got into the playoffs was another miracle. Going to Atlanta, splitting the doubleheader, going to Milwaukee, then go back to Atlanta, going back and forth. And what came down to be like Alonso maybe last at bat, and Howie Rose hit it could be the last at bat. He hits a game winning, I think, a 3-run homer, and it was just unbelievable. Then the playoffs come, Vientos hitting the grand slam went after they walked Lindor in Dodger Stadium. The Phillies where Lindor hits the grand slam. It was just unbelievable the way this team came together. Look, they played. There were 2 games from the World Series. It's a successful season, no matter how you slice it. It was just a fun season from June on.
Rich, I'll ask you to go back into the season again. At what point did you say something else is going on here?
You know what it was for me, Sam? It was the game against the Marlins when they had gone to London, right? They lose the first game to the Phillies, they get blown out. The second game on the Sunday, that incredible double play to end the game, when it looked with Drew Smith on the mound, in whom I have no confidence, it looked like they were going to blow the game, right? That weird double play. And then they come back and they lose the first game back, and it's like, oh, jet lag. And I was like, please just stop with the jet lag. You could see that coming. But then they win the next 2. The JD Martinez walk-off home run, to me, was a turning point of the season on that Thursday night game, because then they swept the Padres. And now it's 5 wins in a row. And the team that had 2 weeks prior been 11 games under 500 was now showing signs of life, right? They were showing signs of life. They were starting to play better. And from there, that's really when the arrows started to point up. They played well right up until the All-Star break. They came out of the All-Star break playing well. And they never looked back, And that's when you had the feeling that something special was happening. This whole thing with, the grimace and the OMG and all that was a bonding moment for them. And I'll give you credit, Sam, because in those text messages, you said that you felt the problems in the clubhouse, right? With Scherzer and Verlander, and that it wasn't so much an on-the-field problem. Well, what happened this year kind of shows you that clubhouse chemistry, and that's all you hear now, is they had such great chemistry last year. If all those guys a lot of those guys might not be here, right? Winker and Iglesias and all the different guys. Martinez, who was like a hitting coach. How do you rebuild the chemistry? So you were absolutely right. There probably was a sort of like a malicious undertone in the clubhouse in 23 that may have contributed to it, because you saw what happens when the team bonds like they did. It was lightning in a bottle, like I said earlier, not only on the field, but you don't know how these guys are going to blend together. And they blended incredibly well together, like off the charts well. You know, Jesse Winker was that little bit of the 86 match, a little bit of a tough guy, a little bit of a showman. You know, he had that. Iglesias was like the fun guy. Everybody loved that guy. They brought him in. JD Martinez was the hitting coach, so to speak. Harrison Bader was a fun guy. They loved him, even though he had some huge hits, even though his on the field presence wasn't.
I know. I was just gonna say that, like, I really wish Bader had just kept it going a little bit, like, because it was a lot of fun when he was getting those big hits.
Yeah,
Like,
so
to get us back into it in June, like it, and then all of a sudden it just completely died for the rest of the year. At no point did he ever really pick it up.
But with a guy like Bader, which is why I love players like that, because Bader might not hit if he goes into, and he didn't hit much with the Yankees last year either, but he could do something to help you win. He could run, he could play elite defense in the outfield. He was a great clubhouse presence. And again, they got it right. And there aren't many teams that do that sign a bunch of guys to 1 year contracts, and just somehow the chemistry worked, and it did, and we saw the benefit of it. We saw the outcome.
So you would re-sign Winker?
Oh my God, yes, absolutely. Last night on Hot Stove, they were talking about Jock Peterson, and Jock Peterson had better numbers than Winker. He really did. He played 132 games. I didn't realize he played that many games for them. I thought he was more of a pinch hitter, but he played a lot of games for the Diamondbacks. And but Winker he's Winker. He's that funny guy. He's a fan favorite. He'll get you the big hit. He's that chemistry guy that I really, really hope they bring him back as a left-handed DH option. Absolutely.
Jeff, I'll go right to you.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I want Winker back. He is
Okay.
yeah. He gives that little attitude that they needed in the clubhouse and in the dugout. He's like Rich, a fun guy, and you know what? When he's with us, he ain't hitting against us, so that's a good thing too.
So, Rich, I'll ask you this, and like, it's funny because they were talking like, oh, the Reds might sign Winker back. But Rich, do you think Winker and Alonso, do you think both will be signed back? And I want to ask you first, do you think they'll be signed back? And then answer, do you want them signed back?
So I see Winker as a David Stearns guy. He's a role player, the kind of guy you want. David Stearns is has a very great eye for that kind of player. So I do think they're going to bring Winker back as a left-handed DH option. Pete, I think everything you're hearing is exactly right. If his market collapses and he'll take a 4 to 5 year contract at 20 to 25, they probably would bring him back. But I don't think they're in a rush to, because Vladdy Guerrero becomes a free agent after next season. They may be thinking 1 year stopgap, bring somebody in for first base or a short term kind of a thing. Power hitters, some of them age well, some of them don't. Um, I think they would like to have Pete back on a reasonable contract. I don't think they're going to chase him, though. I don't think they will, because I think they figure if we don't get Pete back, we'll move Vientos to first, bring in a third baseman, or maybe bring in a short-term first baseman. We could chase Vladdy Guerrero after next season. I think they see first base as having multiple options where they're not wed to Pete. And so do I want them back? I absolutely want Winker back. I would love to have Pete back. I could live without it because I'm worried about a power hitter on the other side of 30 being signed to a 5 to 6 year contract. I would love to have him back. Will I be heartbroken if he signs somewhere else? I won't.
Okay, Rich, I will follow up with the clubhouse thing, especially with the way the season ended. I got a big hit for my boys, right? And he did keep getting big hits. It wasn't just the Milwaukee hit. After that, like, they didn't get to the World Series. And he didn't. Maybe you could say, yeah, okay, he didn't get a hit in the Game 6. That was, it got us to Game 7. But Heat was a big reason why we got back to LA. Like, what about the legacy? What about the legacy in terms of the fact that he's right there? He's about one season, basically, away from breaking the record of home run hitting as a Met. You have to think they're thinking about that. You have to think, like, I'd like to get to the Juan Soto Met part in terms of Steve Cohen, in terms of what's being cultivated, Steve Cohen wise, seemingly. But do you think Heat is included in that?
I really think, Sam, that first of all, let me say this: the Pete home run against Milwaukee. I've been a Met fan for over 50 years, and that was in my top 3 moments of all time. I still have visions of that. I still play the Howie Rose call of that. It was just they were down to their last leg. Lindor gets on. Let's not forget the Nimmo hit, the Nimmo base hit, right? And then I'm sitting here on the couch. I'm like, nice run, boys. This is it. Devin Williams is going to strike out Pete, and game over. No more out, game over. And it was mind blowing that he did that. But anyway, answering your question, all those things matter. Home run, franchise home run leader, homegrown Met, all those things are factors. I think David Stearns looks at it as this is a cold hearted business, man. You got to do the best thing for the ball club. And I think if David Stearns were on this podcast and the cameras were off and we weren't recording, and we said, tell us honestly, would you rather have Vladdy after next year for 4 years, or Pete for 5, including next year, or Vladdy for 4 to 7 years, whatever it might be? He's going to tell you he'd rather have Vladdy Guerrero. Vladdy Guerrero's a better player. I mean, I love Pete. Pete's better defensively than he gets credit.
I can't argue that.
Pete is a franchise icon. Pete is clubhouse chemistry. He's all those things. Is Vladimir Guerrero a better player than Pete? He is. And David Stearns, I think, looks at things in a very cold and calculated manner, which you have to. And he might say to himself, I could do better at first. I would love to have Pete. Team-friendly contract, yes. But do I have to chase Pete down with a crazy contract when I could bring Vladdy Guerrero in? I think that's the way he's thinking about it. I'd love to hear Jeff's take on that, because
Yeah, I mean, I would love to have Pete back also. I'm looking at the home run lead. He's only 26 behind Darryl Strawberry for all time, 16 behind David Wright. So he's right up there. He must be thinking about legacy as well. Obviously, Scott Boras is his agent. So I was hoping to get a 2-for-1 with Soto and Alonso on the same day, but that didn't happen.
I was just hoping for the back-to-back.
Yeah, exactly.
Back-to-back,
could you imagine Pete Alonso with Soto hitting in front of him? I mean, that's pretty good protection. And yeah, but to Rich's point, it's a 1 year you can get Vladdy Guerrero, and that's hard to put down. So my only thing is I wouldn't want to move Vientos to first base. I mean, he is a kid who's just doing well at third base. He has a rocket for an arm. That arm will be wasted at first base. And all the pressures he had on him coming in last year, and now here's another thing to throw on him. Learn a new position. I mean, I know he's played a couple of games in minor leagues, but he's nowhere as accomplished as Pete, who does get a lot of credit. Does get a lot of flack for being a defensive first baseman. He's better than when all the criticism, definitely. Yeah. Definitely, but he had that reputation coming up, and it's kind of hard to get rid of that reputation. But I'd rather have a different 1 year stopgap than moving the Vientos over the first. I don't know, Christian Walker, Goldschmidt, whoever's out there, just for 1 year if you're going to bring in Vladdy Guerrero. But having said that, I'd love to see Pete back with the Mets.
Yeah, that's just my thing is that we've never had this guy that if they retain him, it's definite that he'll break all these records. And Pete's kind of an aloof guy to kind of take that on too, and it's kind of funny.
Yeah, and you know what? He plays every day.
Yeah,
he plays every day.
He does. So before we get to the end, I think we have to talk about pitching. Rich, just go into it. They signed Clay Holmes. Let's start there. And where do you want them to go from there?
Well, David Stearns, I think he does things in a very intellectual way, and I love it. He's not going to give a starting pitcher an 8-year contract because it never works out. They end up getting hurt. You end up, look at the Yankees with Max Fried. They're lucky if they get 5 seasons of the 8. They really are. Fried has an injury history. So what I think they will do is they're looking at the mid-level guys like Nick Pivetta. I wanted them to get Evaldi. He signed with the Rangers. They're looking at guys like Nick Pivetta. I'm glad they didn't get Crochet because they would have gutted their farm system. They've taken years to build up. They were talking about trading Jet Williams and Acuna Jr. Not Jr. He's not the junior. Ronald's the junior. They're talking about trading Jet Williams and Acuna, Kevin Parada, basically all their top tier guys for Crochet. And yeah, the guy's a great pitcher. He absolutely is. But I think Stern's philosophy is give me a bunch of mid-level starters, give me a good bullpen. So this way, I'm not committing 8, 10 years to a starting pitcher, which would be a bad contract, right? So where they're going to go, I'll tell you where I want them to go. If they can give me Sasaki at that age, that kid, so you give him and Senga up top the rotation, Peterson, right? Then you've got Holmes. I'm okay there. Those 4 guys, I'm good. And then after that, you could plug in a McGill, you could plug in a Budo. They might want to put him back in the rotation. I'm fine with that rotation. I don't want to chase Corbin Burns with an 8 to 10 year contract. I don't want to do that. Maybe they could trade for a pitcher. So to answer your question, I'm good with adding a bunch of number 2/3 starters. I don't think you have to chase the number 1 guy. And bullpen wise, they need to do a little work there. And I'm going to give you guys a name to think about. I don't know if you guys watched Hot Stove tonight, but it was a very interesting possibility Jim Duquette brought up for the bullpen. Kenley Jansen is a free agent. Okay, first thing, guy's a quality major league closer. He's not going to be the closer on the Mets. So you'd have to tell him you're a setup guy. But he's also 37 years old. And you might be able to say to him, hey, Kenley, we think we have a pretty good shot here. If you want a ring, you could set up for Diaz. You'll close sometimes. Diaz can't pitch every day. What do you think? Could you imagine a 1-2 punch of Kenley Jansen going to Diaz, or even Diaz is down for a day, you have Kenley Jansen? So I'm going to ask you guys to when you do your comments on pitching, think about that. I was intrigued by that. But yeah, so that's my thought. I like what Stearns is doing. I like the idea of chasing the 2 and 3 starters, getting a bunch of them. You already got Senga top the rotation. And I am laser focused on Sasaki. I
agree. I agree there for sure.
That's my thought.
I think in terms of Kenley, like I saw somewhere that like somebody reminded that he's actually caught a few games in the major leagues. Is that right?
That is true. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, Jeff, I'll just send it over to you in terms of pitching.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to echo what Rich said. We had, Severino was a great reclamation project, and he turned in a good season and then went over to Oakland and took the money, which is great for him. But Stearns goes.
Funny to me.
Yeah, right. No, right. And then so Stearns goes and signs another reclamation product in Frankie Montas, who did not have a good season in the Bronx. I think he had a pretty good bounce back with I guess he was at Cincinnati last year and Milwaukee. So that look, hopefully we can do that again. Hit lightning strikes again. He has an opt out after 1 year. I'm good with Peterson and who else? Peterson and who else is on?
Mania. Well, so
Well,
I guess in terms of the Frankie Montas element, do you guys think there's anything? And I'll send it to Rich and then Jeff just pick it up. Do you think there's anything to the fact that like they're great friends and it's most likely that Mania is going to wind back up because of that, as well as whatever they, who is Montas's? I'm sorry, not Montas's. Mania's agent.
Good question.
I don't know.
I'll let you know in a second now.
Okay. Them being friends, I think, is a nice, cute story. I think if somebody offers Mania 4 years, 80, then if the Mets offer him 360, he's not going to be with his buddy. He's going to take the 4 years and 80. But it can't hurt, right? It can't hurt that they have Montas, who I forgot about when I was doing my rotation thing. Montas is another guy. You're right. He's Severino V2, and if they can send him to the pitching lab and
he wasn't as bad though last year as Severino was the year before.
No,
right.
No, and Hefner could work with him. I guess Hefner is getting a lot of props, right, throughout baseball now as being a really good pitching coach, which we always thought he was.
Sounds like.
So yeah, I'm okay with it. Again, I think the bullpen scares me a little bit. That's what hurt us last year. That's what hurt the Mets in 2024. That's what hurt them in the Dodger series. They just didn't have the arms. And but Jeff, I want to get both you guys to comment on Kenley Jansen. At first I was like, the guy's a closer, he'll never do it. But if you really think about it, maybe, right? What do you think?
No, I think he. I mean, how old is he? He must
37.
be like 35.
37.
Right? Why not? You want a ring?
Right.
And yes, the Dodgers just won. Okay, another thing. Speaking of the Dodgers and speaking of pitching, I am totally for the Walker Buehler experiment.
So am I.
Same.
Yeah. And let me just comment on Kenley Jansen. I would like to see him in New York because I always thought bullpens are fickle. You never know what you're going to get, but he's a proven guy. And, if he doesn't have the pressure of closing, I think he'd be very good setting up Diaz.
Agreed.
Yeah. Just all right. Yeah. 2025, guys.
And by the way, Mania has Boris as his agent.
Yes, that's what I thought. I just wanted to confirm.
Sam, are we going to talk about the 800-pound gorilla, or we have to get to that?
the money, you mean?
The man himself, who's being introduced tomorrow.
Right. Yeah. Have we not really gone in depth with Juan Soto yet?
We haven't said his name yet.
We haven't even said his name yet. Jeez. Oh my God. Well, that's totally on me. First of all, my initial thoughts are, yes, the Mets had to make this deal. Bar none, had to make the deal. Number one. Number two, the only reason it is this price, regardless of the two-way with Shohei Ohtani, is because Shohei Ohtani set the standard. And that's why Scott Boras came in here. Bottom line, regardless of the two-way thing. And of course, I think also where I'm very, I think that I appreciate it, but I also don't appreciate the fact that we had when people are criticizing us because Steve Cohen is spending so much money, they don't understand the Wilpon elements. They don't understand where we came from. And so it's almost, it's a part of me almost wishes we had something in the middle before we got here. But what has happened is we got to the complete opposite. Not only in terms of just corporate mindset, corporate organizing. Just he's so much better at presentation. He's so much better at everything before the baseball and the spending catches up. He's spent on the ballpark to the point, and I did partially want to get to the Yankees and the contrast of what Steve Cohen is doing. But what you can see in contrast to what Hal Steinbrenner is doing is that Steve Cohen immediately updated the ballpark and made sure it didn't look like a 2009 ballpark. It looked like a 2021 when he came in ballpark. You go to Yankee Stadium, Hal Steinbrenner hadn't updated anything since 2009, basically. You can tell. You can just tell. And that you can also tell is the way he's running the franchise. And it all adds up. It's the nuance of it all. And one of the reasons why I just, outside of the Yankees winning a 28th championship, I didn't want Hal to be rewarded for coasting off of being the Yankees. I didn't want that out of that year. But so I'll pass it on to you, Rich, first. In terms of my opinion about it, this was a monumental moment in the shift of, regardless of price, this had to happen. And you know, the Yankees are partially let it happen, considering that it wasn't that off. It wasn't that close. And I'm sorry, it was that close. Excuse me. So, Rich, where are you on the Mets perspective and everything that I laid out about the Yankee perspective? Where are you on that as well?
Well, you know, some of the reactions were absolutely comical. You know, they said that all the Mets have is Steve Cohen's money. Well, you know what? Your owner offered 16 years, 760. Our owner offered 15, 765. Yes, it could go over 800 with incentives. There's not a lot of difference there. Soto chose the Mets over the Yankees. It wasn't the money. The money was almost identical. He chose the Mets for the reasons that you've talked about. The Mets are now a destination. Alex Cohen apparently is great at talking about the family aspect of it. Steve Cohen gets right. Hal Steinbrenner doesn't do that. Steve Cohen gets right down there with the players, talks them, has them at his house in Greenwich, all those things. The Mets are becoming a destination because it's more than the dollars. It's about, yes, it's about direction of the franchise. It's that. But it's about the way they're doing things. We're doing things professionally, the pitching lab, upgrading Citi Field. All of it matters, right? And that might be a reason why you might be able to talk to Kenley Jansen into coming here, because he might want to be a part of that, you know? So anyway, getting back to Soto, in my opinion, I don't care that they stole him away from the Yankees. I don't care if Santa Claus brought him. I'm just happy they have a great player, right? Taking away from the Yankees means nothing to me. Zero. I'm glad that the Mets now have a legitimate left-handed bat, other than Ohtani, probably the best hitter in Major League Baseball for the next 15 years. That makes me happy. I don't give a damn that he came from the Bronx. It means nothing. I'm laughing at the Yankee fans who say that all you have is money when they offered the same money. Anyway, and they just paid max.
Well, it's just in the history of it all.
Well, right.
With
and
money.
So I don't care about big brother, little brother. You know when that changes? That changes when the Mets win a World Series. That's when that changes. It doesn't change because you sign Juan Soto. It changes when the Mets are in the Canyon of Heroes and Steve Cohen is on a float waving to his people. That's when that narrative changes. And this was a big step toward that. Now, did you both see Buster Olney and Jeff Passan, where they said it's a bad baseball contract at the end of the day? And you know what? Maybe it is, because they're going to be paying a 40 and 41-year-old Juan Soto $51 million at the end of that contract. And that's a big commitment. And for a guy how many 40-year-old DHs are there? I mean, it's not going to be a good contract in years, let's call it 11 through 15, probably not. But in the first 10 years of that contract, if you get 3 championships, it was a damn good contract, right?
Well, we have to see what these 5 years first.
He could opt out after 5. Yeah, that's true.
Well, with the idea that they add 4 million to each year,
Right.
but it's a fascinating. The entire thing is fascinating, but Jeff, here's the thing about him. If there was ever a player that is anti what could happen, what generally happens with like the Jason Bays, like Juan Soto might be prone, other than knock on wood, like I have to just, knock on wood, a catastrophic Bo Jackson type. He's that type of athlete. So, like, where are you on all of this?
First of all, let me say I have a friend who's a big Yankee fan, and he's glad that Soto's off. Oh, he couldn't play defense. Oh, he couldn't run. Oh, you know what? I said, you know what? That is such garbage. This guy is a game changer. And you know what? The first 10 years of the contract is going to be very good because he's only 26 years old.
Right.
Now, I've been looking at Sarah Lang's on X or Twitter, Slangs on Sports. I just want to read a couple of observations that she has down here. Most consecutive seasons with 400 on base percentage to start in the career is Ted Williams, Frank Thomas, Wade Boggs, Juan Soto, who's active. So that's pretty good. Most seasons with 30 home runs plus 100 walks before turning 26, Juan Soto, Ted Williams, Mickey Mantle. I mean, unbelievable. Juan Soto has 201 career home runs, tied with Albert Pujols for 6 most before turning 26, behind only Jimmy Fox, Eddie Matthews, A-Rod, Mel Ott, and Mickey Mantle. And remember, he only played 47 games in 2020, so he could be higher in that list. I mean, this guy is a game changer. He gets on base. He doesn't strike out. He makes everybody around him better. That's why he's getting all that money, and he's only 26. So the last couple of years of that contract, okay, he might decline, but it's not going to be Albert Pujols when he signed 10 years at over 30.
No, Jeff, let me ask you this. I was wondering this the other day, and I will bounce it over to Rich for his opinion as well. Do you think some of the defense could be fixed with better organizational fundamentals, which the Yankees have not apparently? Because this was not just a Juan Soto thing with that team. This is the fifth inning. This is, and Juan Soto had nothing to do from a falling apart. The thing that everybody's just like, he's a butcher in right field. He's a butcher in right field. That's what I keep hearing.
Yeah.
On the fan. But anyway,
I think he has.
What do you think of that?
I think do
you think the Mets could fix that?
Well, I think he has a little bit of the Pete Alonso reputation where he's a lot worse than he really is. I mean, he can catch the ball. I mean, runners aren't going first or third on him. But the big fix was Jose Siri, putting him in center, and this guy can just go flat out catch. He's not going to hit, but he can go flat out catch the ball. And I think, I mean, the coaching has a lot to do with it, and they can probably position him better. And I think he's not going to be as bad as people think. Is he going to take stupid routes to the balls? Probably. But you know what? If he lets in 5 runs over the course of the year while driving in 120, I'll take that trade off.
Rich,
I agree with Jeff. I think with some coaching, and a big part of it is Aaron Judge is not a center fielder. He's not a natural center fielder. You get Jose Siri playing center field at least some of the time. He's going to cover a lot of ground, which will enable Soto to cover less ground. Soto has a very strong arm. He may take some crazy routes now and then, and we may get a little frustrated here and there, but he's not a butcher. The guy is not a butcher in right field. He's probably average to slightly below average, but like Jeff said, when you're the second best hitter in Major League Baseball and you're slightly below average as a right fielder, I'll take that trade any day of the week. And I think having a better center fielder is going to make him better. Because Jose Siri, I don't know if you guys have been looking at his, when the Mets got him, you saw some of the videos. Guy is an elite defender. I mean, he has blazing speed. He's an elite defender. And offensively, his numbers are interesting. Like if you saw, I think one season he hit like 188, but with 25 home runs. So he's going to strike out a ton. He's going to frustrate us at the plate, but he's going to pop some dingers. And my God, is he going to play great defense? And I think that'll help Soto.
So Nimmo is now just exclusively in left field.
I don't think they see Siri as he's not an everyday center fielder. He just doesn't give you enough bat. I mean, he's more like the Bader. He'll play, he'll start a couple of games, he'll come in for defense. I think they have to solve center field still. I could live with Nimmo in center
So
field.
would you welcome Bader back?
I think with Siri, you don't need Bader. And Bader is $11 million last year. Siri's $2 million. So I think they love that cost difference too.
And you also have Tyrone Taylor there.
You have Tyrone Taylor.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I love Tyrone. And yeah, what a player for that last year.
Oh my God, the guy's a great athlete. And then there's talk about trading for Cedric Mullins from the Orioles for everyday center fielder. Do they absolutely desperately need an everyday center fielder? Probably not. You can put Nimmo there and Taylor. You can make it work. If they get an everyday center fielder, fine. I mean, it's a nice to have.
Just you have to Nimmo's going to be. You have to think Nimmo's going to be an everyday part of the lineup.
Oh sure.
So it's just it's just a matter of where they and another thing too. Like everybody's talking about him being a butcher. Like I know the money is crazy for just him being a DH, but one season of Shohei Ohtani was just him being a DH. So already part of the money. So I think at some point you have to think Juan Soto is probably just going to be a DH. What do you think, Jeff?
Yeah, I think toward the back end of that contract, sure, he'll be a DH. I have no doubt about it. I have no problem with that.
Yeah,
Agreed.
Rich.
Agreed. Yeah. I think he's going to be 41 when the contract ends. There aren't many 41-year-olds out in the outfield. So he'll probably be a DH the last 5 years of that contract, maybe. That's fine. If you give me, if let me ask you guys this, being realistic, a 40-year-old Juan Soto, second to last year of the contract, if he gives you 30 to 35 home runs, a 280 batting average, and 100 RBIs as a DH, I'll take that.
Sure. Absolutely.
No, and he's the type that I can see just being like a lot of the other ones that age well. Honestly, and that's why this was such a unique little junction of New York baseball. It's just, and the fact that it fell into the Yankees' arms first for us to take it. It's just, I know, Rich, you said you don't care, but really, come on, admit it. It's a little sweet.
What I care about is the abject comedy of the Yankee fan reaction. I'm just happy that's on Juan Soto. But the comedy it provided is like, thank you, God.
Nick Turturro.
Nick Turturro. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, it was awesome. And somebody tweeted, I'm not sure if say names, I won't, but somebody that we probably all follow tweeted, Brandon Tierney tweeted, "Hey Yankees, go after Kyle Tucker.
Yeah.
Better than Soto."
Right.
This person that we probably all followed it up with, "Yeah, get him used to New York, then we'll sign him next year." That's comedy right there, man.
It really is. Okay, so Rich, is there anything else we should cover in terms of a free agent roster and off season?
Let's see. Well, the Crochet's off the board. We talked about pitching. We talked about Kenley Jansen. Any other major free agents that they're linked to? What about, let's touch base real quick. I'll say it, then maybe Sam and Jeff comment. I want no part of Arenado under any circumstances. Sam, what do you think? And Jeff, what do you think?
I don't like the idea of trading for Arenado. Like, just the trade part. Like, it's just, I get it, but at the same time, like, first of all, let's sort out first base, because even David Stearns, I mean, he might have been diplomatic about it, but was just like, yeah, Mark Vientos is our third baseman. As of now, he is played himself into being our third baseman. Whatever David Stern said recently. So I think that right now I don't want to spend anything in terms of prospects. I would rather like we still have like $85 million from where we were last year in terms of budget, including obviously the pitching and that was just dead money. So sign Pete, sign a first baseman, whatever you guys think. I'm just all gung ho about just the legacy of Pete. So that's me. Outside of that, like that's still probably if Pete can get 30 million, let's say, like that's still 30 million of 85. So I still think that Luis Angel Acuna, let's say, does not need to be included in a deal like that. Like it's just, I think he is at some, and I think this is how Stearns operates: is that at some point everything needs to be cultivated and accumulated. Just it all needs to come together. And I think Acuna, weirdly enough, is a part of that. And seems to be able to play multiple positions.
I wouldn't trade it. I wouldn't trade Acuna. The person I traded is probably Brett Beatty. I mean, he's a good kid, but he's had his chances with the Mets. Actually, right, I think he'd be perfect in Yankee Stadium because of that swing.
Arenado would probably be equivalent to the Lindor trade, where they would ask for both Brett Beatty and something else.
Right.
Yeah, with Arenado, for a player on the decline like that, I think that Cardinals would want you to take the money. And if you're going to take the money, you're going to give them, not give them your top prospects. Speaking of Acuna, one of my asks for next year, I would like him to be the starting second baseman. Let him be the starting second baseman. Let him bat ninth. Say, hey, kid, you know what? You're a good glove. You're also our backup shortstop. He could do that, right? I like Jeff McNeil, really like Jeff McNeil. It's time for him to go. And so it is. It's just time. You get that money off the books, put Acuna at second base, say, you know what, kid, you're a second baseman. Give us your good glove. You're a backup shortstop. You have some power. You're extremely fast. Steal some bases and grow with us. That's my opinion on second base. I would love to see that kid get the job every day. Love it.
I think that's something that's probably on the books, on the table.
Yeah, I mean, I think McNeil probably wore out his welcome now. I mean, he can really play outfield and infield, but I think it is time to go. He probably flourish somewhere else.
So I want to finish real quick, because the whole McNeil thing reminds me of the fact that he all of a sudden just came into the 2024 playoff season. So Rich, like, really, when you think about this 2024 season, do you get the same feeling I do that, like, of all the seasons that the Mets didn't win a championship, like you said, top three. So so in terms of the other two, is it 73 and 86?
Yeah, 73 they didn't win. They went to the World Series. They didn't win. And 86.
No, but I'm saying in terms of you said top three. 2024 is in your top three.
Okay, yes. Sorry about that. 73, they came out of nowhere over the course of a month, right? Which was great. And I was very little kid at the time. I wasn't even old enough to stay up and watch a game. So for me, that would not be in the top three. This was more of a build, that took months. So to me, the top three seasons they didn't win would be 85. They had a great year with watching good in every fifth day when nobody could hit them. Probably 85, followed by 84 when they came out of the abyss to 24. I would say, and actually I wouldn't rank them that way. I would say 24 is probably my favorite of the three, followed by 85, followed by 84.
No, so I thought you said that like 2024 was in your top three favorite seasons.
It was. Yeah, it was.
So outside of the idea of not winning the World Championship, what are the other two outside of 2024?
Yeah, 86 for sure, obviously, because they won, but they were such badasses. It was hysterical to watch. Like they would not only beat you, they'd beat you up, right? So the 86 team was for that. And then I would say my other favorite season was it has to be 85 because 85 what the Gooden thing and they were a great team. Carter hitting the walk-off against Neil Allen on opening day when I froze my butt off. I would say those two seasons were probably my other two favorites.
So it's incredible. So 85, 86, and 2024. That's incredible to me. So we have been doing this podcast with the Rising Apple Report included since 2013. And even over that time, which includes a World Series appearance, that is not included in your top three. So, how come no 1999? How come no 2000? How come no 2006? How come no 2015? And whatever else you may want to include.
99 was a great year, but I can't get losing to the Braves. I hate the Braves with such a passion.
Right.
I can't get that in my head. 2000 didn't exist. It never happened. We went from 99 to 2001. That never occurred. Nope. And then, so, there were some other really fun seasons. 2006, I mean, I'm sorry, great year and all that, but when people talk about the Endy catch, I'm like, no, stop. That's a horrible memory. It is not a good memory. They lost the game. I don't care if he climbed on the Empire State Building to make a catch. They lost the game. That's all that matters. Their season ended with Beltran watching strike three. Don't talk to me about a 2006 and Endy. A great season. I'm being facetious, of course. Great season, but no. The way it ended, it's not there for me. It's just not. 99 losing the Braves, 2000 the Yankees, 06. Again, these are all great years, but they ended horribly. So that's why they're not there for me. I can't get the horrible ending. The horrible ending obliterates the great season.
So this, even though we lost to the Dodgers, and that's what's so unique to me too. And then I'll pass it to Jeff after you answer this. The way they lost to the Dodgers was still very admirable, right?
It was. They went up against a powerhouse. I love that they won game 5 because it would have been easy to pack your tent and say, this is over. Pete hit the home run in the first inning, and they showed some guts in game 5. They went out there in game 6, and Manaea was out of gas. That's all that it was. It wasn't a horrible ending. It was like, you know what, guy? And no, you don't get a participation trophy in Major League Baseball. It's not what I'm talking about. What I'm saying is they fought so valiantly. Manaea just had nothing left at that point.
No, and then when you think about the way they were still at 7-4 before, unfortunately, Senga, which was just, of course, eventually it just gets to him. The inning before was okay. He was okay. But then that 8th inning just got away. And it made sense. 10-5 when it was all said and done, we still scored a run, and there was still. So Jeff, starting with that element of there was an admirable way the Mets lost in 2024 that was unique to any other way they've lost in other non-championship seasons. George Stone. People are still talking about George Stone.
Yeah.
Right? So
they are.
So starting with the end of 2024, your ranking in terms of the 2024 season and other seasons that we've been talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I obviously enjoyed 2024 so much. We can take the. I would probably get rid of that Haktua thing that they had on that promotion. It was pretty stupid, but but
she's raising money for dogs.
Yeah, exactly. That's admirable. That's admirable.
She is.
I love 1999. I did with Piazza and Bobby Valentine at the helm. I mean, actually in 2000 they got to the World Series with Benny Agbagnani, Run Timo Run, Run Perez, and there's someone else there I'm leaving out, but still that was who does that? Obviously, I was there in '84 and I just loved it. '85 was great. So yeah, those and 2006. I know, despite the ending, that was a fun year because they were the best team in baseball, and just couldn't finish up. Just couldn't finish it out.
And El Duque, Pedro, they were hired to get there, and unfortunately, as we found out, I believe Pedro more than I will ever believe Jeff. Unfortunately, we found out that Jeff, usurped his power over Pedro in 2005, which led to the injury in 2006. Yeah. No, and so I think outside of 2015, 2012, and 2024, and it's crazy. Just because 2012, I was at the no-hitter. 2012 is the most enjoyable losing season I've ever been a part of. And I don't think there'll ever be a losing season as enjoyable. And unfortunately, it's included in one of those classic post All-Star break Met collapses where they're 1-11 or, and they had a bunch of, remember Valdesman went ahead against the Nationals to try to usurp, that's my word of the last 10 minutes, usurp the loss of against the Nationals, like splitting in the middle of that losing streak. And then the Nationals came back on us. But R.A. Dickey, I jumped up and down with Greg Prince when David Wright went ahead against the Pirates and the R.A. Dickey 20th winner, 20th W came. That's 2009 and 2023 and 2017. Probably the least enjoyable of the year, because 2016 too. 2016, I broke my clavicle, my left clavicle right here. I have 8 bolts and a titanium plate now because I broke my clavicle when the morning that the Mets lost to the Giants to go 60-62 in 2016. And then from there on, they won the wild card. Mm-hmm. And so Dizzy Gillespie, wait, no, that wasn't, wait. It wasn't Dizzy Gillespie, but it was a Gillespie.
Connor.
I know it wasn't Dizzy. I was definitely joking, but but 2016, it's still, it was arguably a more enjoyable run than the 2015 one, because the 2015 one, the way it was all about the division. It was all about the way it came together at the end of July, at the beginning of August. The way that came together, and it was just like, this is ours now. It just immediately we took over on top of the Nationals. 2016 was definitely, especially James Loney at first base when we won. There's something unique about 2016 for sure. But
well, I like to amend my answer for. I do want to include 2015 in there as one of the most enjoyable seasons, because they had Eric Campbell hitting cleanup and John Mayberry hitting cleanup, and then they got Yoenis Cespedes, and they just took off.
So, Rich, let me go to that. Why 2024 is the more enjoyable season? over 2015 is because of the Wilpons. Am I right?
Yeah, I think that's part of it. And I think the other part of it is the 2015 season was a struggle. Yes, they won 10 in a row. That was great in April. But then it was a struggle with the John Mayberry and then the Eric Campbell. Um, Getting Cespedes was great. 2015 would probably be my top five for sure. But and the series against the Dodgers was one for the books. I mean, that was amazing, right? The sweep of the Cubs, it was kind of like it was no contest basically. But the series against the Dodgers, I saw you at one of the games. No, I saw you at the Cubs game actually, right? It was against the Cubs. But that series against the Dodgers with the Murphy, scoring, moving around the bases on the misplay by the Dodgers and the home run streak, it's definitely my top five. But to me, the 2024 season with the personalities on the team, um, I love the Iglesias thing, with the OMG and the way they would all pose with the OMG. This was a team, like you said earlier, that was having so much fun. It was infectious. The fan base was into it. 2015 was a little more straightforward baseball. Nothing wrong with that. It was great that they got to the World Series. And again, it's in my top five, but there's something about this team with some of the peripheral stuff, that it was just, I don't know, the Winker element, the way he threw his helmet when he hit the walk-off against the Orioles, some of the Lindor moment against beating the mighty Braves. Come on, when the Mets were down in the ninth inning against the Braves, did any of the three of us think they weren't going to get swept? We thought they were going to get swept and not be in the playoffs, right? The Pete home run, like I said, top five Mets moment of all time. The Lindor Grand Slam, top five Mets moment of all time. You crammed all that stuff in that it wasn't only a baseball achievement. It was I don't know, it was just like this family.
It was an exorcism. It was really 2024 felt like an exorcism. And I think that's where I'm coming together with this, because I can say everything I need to about the fact that the Mets should have won 2015 World Series. We've talked about it ad nauseum. I think that's the thing that stands out to me and why I feel so hopeful, more than I think I've ever felt coming out of a season. It is because it felt like at the end we beat the Braves. At the end, we beat the Phillies. All right, so we couldn't beat the Dodgers, but we've beaten the Dodgers before anyway. And then the Yankees failed miserably. There's so many things that came. There was something like it was like the Mets won one more game than the Yankees did against the Dodgers. And I've never even seen the Mets have an inning like that. I'll end with this though. Jeff, have you ever seen the Mets? Okay, so they had one moment with Luis Castillo. They had one moment with Daniel Murphy. They had one moment with Lucas Duda. Can you remember an entire inning unfolding like that, the way the fifth inning did?
That was unbelievable, that inning. I mean, they had two outs and that whole thing started. I mean, Judge drops the ball, which, it was a...
Garrett Cole just pointing.
Garrett Cole. Cover first base. That whole game changes. He covers first base. They do that every day in spring training. They practice that all the time. And he doesn't cover first base. I was shocked. I couldn't believe it. And fundamentals. You gotta do that every time. And he had a brain freeze. I mean, for a guy making $37 million, he's got to cover first base.
And Rizzo's not busting it. Rizzo's
Right.
Certainly not busting it. Rich.
Well, what about the other one? What about Volpe throwing to Chisholm, and throwing it into the runner?
Yeah.
They had so many chances to get out of that inning, and they completely imploded. They embarrassed themselves on national TV. I was neutral in that World Series. Obviously I don't root for the Yankees, but all my family are mostly Yankee fans. So I figured, you know what? If one of the two teams has to win, I despise the Dodgers. I hate everything about them. I don't like their whole gist. Ohtani drives me crazy. The guys, I think he was involved in the gambling thing, my opinion, and the fact that he sells so much merchandise here in the U.S. and in Japan, they were never going to really chase him down. I think that's wrong, personally. I think that was swept under the rug. That's my own opinion. their whole aura, I don't know, the Hollywood thing and the celebrities behind the plate, that whole thing doesn't work for me. Yes, it's hard to root for the Yankees, so I was neutral in the series. Um, but I have to say, like, they embarrassed themselves on national TV, and now they've lost Juan Soto, so it's kind of like, and they overpaid Max Fried like crazy amounts of money. Anyway,
So I'll finish with this in terms of Juan Soto. I once was at a game in 2011 where R.A. Dickey, with I think it was a 3-2 lead, like who had kind of just not looked great all game. He got the eighth inning. Terry gave him the eighth inning, and I think it was against the Astros in 2011. I have this on video, and he gave up the lead, and the Astros ended up winning 4-3. And I got a video with Billy Joel's New York State of Mind playing, and it's on YouTube. I uploaded it to YouTube, even though YouTube was like, "Hey, the song," but it's R.A. Dickey at the end of the game. He only pitched into the eighth, and I think got taken out in the eighth, but was up there. I forget. You could probably look it up and see whether the Mets maybe had tried to rally in the bottom of the inning, of the ninth inning. But they lose 4-3 against the Astros. The Astros in those old uniforms, the red ones, the road version, and they win 4-3. New York State of Mind's playing. Everybody's vacating the dugout, and R.A. Dickey, with just Billy Joel blasting, is just sitting alone in the dugout, just being like, "That was my game." Like, you can just see it in the video. You just see it. That was my game. Just looking out. My point being is that the only other time that I had seen something like Juan Soto sitting and looking out at the World Series was R.A. Dickey at that game. And he had won a world championship before. He won one with DC. But still, he was watching the Dodgers celebrate. And I don't think he was thinking I should go to the Dodgers. And this is really where I want to end with this, the bookend the podcast with this, in terms of, do you think the seed was planted a long time ago with some of the fact that he could hit in Citi Field, the fact that he liked hitting in Citi Field, he's been talking about that. Do you think that he kind of wanted to be a Met for a while now? And I'll go to you first, Rich.
Even on Sunday afternoon when I was doom scrolling X, like we all were, to see what he was going to do, it was always the Mets to me. And for some reason, and I'm not a confident Mets fan, believe me. I look up for the safe to fall on my head all the time. But to me, he was always going to be a Met. There was something subtle about him that I just had the feeling that he always wanted to play for the Mets. And National League East, go back to the National League, go back to the National League East. And I don't know if he specifically alluded to it at times in the past. I think he did at various points, like making just offhand comments like 2-3 years ago. To me, I just felt he was always going to be a Met. It just seemed to align that way. And so the whole thing, like when they asked him right after the game, after the World Series game, Game 5, they said, "You're going to come back to the Yankees." He said, "I'm open all 30 teams," or whatever he said. Even Jacob deGrom, after they were eliminated by the Padres, deGrom was saying, "Oh, I'd like to come back." They usually say the right thing. Soto wasn't having it. I mean, he was just like, "I'm open, man." And I don't know. I don't know if am I reading into it, but I always felt that he wanted to be in Queens, and now he is. That's my opinion.
Jeff.
I thought it actually was going to go back to the Yankees. I really did. I'm so happy he didn't. But I think the whole recruiting process with Steve and Alex Cohen, showing them, taking them to their houses, serving them with Latin food down in Florida somewhere, meeting them in California at his mansion. I think they did a great job wooing him and convincing him to come to the Mets. So I'm very happy that happened.
Yeah, and it's just I'm thinking about, I was watching that clip of all the home runs that he's hit at Citi Field that SNY gathered, but I really want that clip of Keith just being like, well, he's not exactly a home run hitter, and so tomorrow is the press conference. Do we know whether? Do we know specifically what time? Has it been announced yet? 3 o'clock.
Yep.
And do we know whether? I'm guessing, guys, that Francisco Lindor and Brandon Imbo are probably going to be there.
I think Lindor was a big part of it. From what I understand, Lindor called him Sunday night, right before he made the decision. I'm not saying he made it because of Lindor, but the word is that Lindor called him shortly before his decision was made. So I would think Lindor would be there. He's the face of the franchise. Especially with Pete, in limbo, right?
Right. Yeah, it's. I'm gonna, turn my Lyft app off and pull over and head over there. So let's toot our own horn for a second. And before we talk about the Metsian podcast, let's first do some shameless plugging. Rich.
Well, for me, it would be Metsmerize Online. There are a bunch of writers there, so what I tend to do is more the business stuff. Like I'm following the Steve Cohen casino thing pretty closely. I do that stuff that the other folks focus on the actual, this player, this war, that kind of thing. This is a good trade, that's a bad trade. I tend to focus more on the business aspect of baseball, things like that, things like TV contracts and ratings and all that. So yeah, MMO for me, Metsmerize Online.
Cool.
And for me, Baseball and Barbecue podcast comes out every Saturday. In fact, this Saturday we're going to have an interview with Bill Pulsifer. It's not a Mets-related podcast. We've had on a lot of Met catchers, actually. They have Dave Nagan on recently, but we also have Lance Parrish, Evan Roberts. We actually had Fred Clare, the Dodgers GM of the 80s. He was very good. Jim Kern, a former pitcher. So baseball-related, barbecue-related, baseball and BBQ.
There you go, guys. And I'm basically doing not much these days. I am the converted Mets fan. I hope to continue on that internet realm of it soon, other than just generally being a converted Mets fan all the time. In terms of the Metsian podcast, first of all, Rich, I have to give you credit where credit is due for the name change. I was it's a Metsian podcast. Let's be vague about it. Let's be vague. A Metsian podcast. And you just kept hammering home the Metsian podcast. And it finally stuck for me.
Good. I'm glad it did. And, and all good things come to an end, and, I'll remember it fondly, but just because that's over doesn't mean we're over, right? I mean, we could still do this and with Jeff. And I was thinking today, we haven't spoken to our good friend there, Metradamus. Haven't spoken to him in a while. He's a great guy to have on. And so we continue to have our fun. We'll find a way.
We'll figure it out. Just with the Metsian podcast without Sam, Rich, and Mike together, right? Jeff, that's where I am with it. That something can't. It just, especially with the way the page is being turned outside of just this podcast with the Mets themselves. I felt as if this is the way to go with this one. we can continue to be Metsian without being the Metsian.
There you go.
Jeff, what are some of your memories of the Metsian podcast?
Well, I tell you, when I first started hearing podcasts, I mean, I didn't know what it was at the beginning. Get a new iPhone, and what's this icon here? And I can listen to and searching Mets. I was, like I said, I was very happy to find the Metsian podcast. I mean, I know there's a couple other ones out there that I listen to. Yours one I listened to religiously, and what was unique about yours is you get to call in. So I had the opportunity to call in a couple of times, and it was just terrific. And I remember, I guess one of my fondest memories was when you had Carl Erskine on, and I called, and we were me and my partner Len Aberman was on the phone with you guys, and then Carl Erskine calls in, and it was just an honor to speak to him, and it was just that has to be one of my favorite podcast memories of doing this thing. So yeah, I appreciate that, listening to you guys.
No, we appreciate you, consistently encouraging us to continue this thing. And, I think at some point, Rich, with the 2024 season, I took the superstitious route, and it was like, oh, we haven't done the podcast yet. Let's keep that going. Let's keep that going.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, to everybody out there listening, thank you so much for listening to us over the years. The Metsian Podcast with Sam, Rich, and Mike has been just one of the most glorious things that I've been a part of. Whether it be Howie Rose, whether it be Skip Lockwood, whether it be just Jeff Cohen and John Coppinger, Metstradamus, like you mentioned, Ted Berg,
yeah. Greg Prince,
Len Aberman of Baseball and Barbecue as well. It's just I want to shout out to Sharon Chapman,
Mark Healy
as well. It's just, this is a family. I was once at an event with a bunch of Mets in 2012, and Kelly Shopik was there. And I said to him, welcome to the Mets family. He had only been there a month. And he looked at me and he went, he really looked at me like this. Like thanks, man. And Kelly Shopik has really no impact on this team from a historical perspective. And yet he is a part of the Mets family forever and always. I had that interaction, and he is there and had that human interaction. That is what baseball, as well as the Mets, is human interactions, and glorious ones at that. So I thank all the listeners out there for continuing to tune in. I thank Rich, I thank Mike, and I thank Jeff for joining us tonight. So thank you all, and Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Holidays, whatever you celebrate. And as always, let's go Mets.
Thanks,
Thank you all.
Thanks, Jeff.
Later, guys.
Have a good night.